Hello, I'm Kristy Wallace, and this is Suddenly I See, a podcast which explores the power of a positive mindset, gratitude, and love in changing your life for the better. Join me as I share the mind hacks, rituals, and choices that have helped me survive and thrive in the face of adversity to arrive at a point where suddenly I see what truly matters in this life. Let's get started. Hey everybody, Happy New Year and welcome back to Suddenly I See podcast. We're up to episode 11, Adjusting Your Vision. I just want to start by thanking you all so much for your love and support to get to this point. I've really appreciated just being able to have that 6 weeks at home with the kids and no pressure to have to keep kind of pumping out podcasts. So thank you for giving me that time and space. But at the same time, oh my gosh, I'm so excited to be back doing the podcast. I've been thinking about it the whole time and it's been an itch I wanted to scratch. But with 3 kids at home, it was just completely unrealistic to even try that. Huge gratitude to my mum today who said, I'm going to take the kids to the movies for you so you can get back into the podcast. And that's why I'm doing the episode now. So shout out to mum and thank you as always for her love and support. This episode, I'm really excited about it because it talks a lot about mindset and narrative, which are things I've developed over the years. And I think single-handedly, along with gratitude, probably those 3 things, gratitude, mindset, narrative, the 3 key things to really shift my life and my perspective. So I'm excited to share how those played out for us on our journey with Patty and hopefully, makes you think and you're challenged as well by how you look at certain situations and maybe gives you a new perspective on that as well. So once Patty finished treatment back in March and he'd rung the bell, we got to the point where chemo had ended, and for a year on end, we'd been going nearly every Thursday to Wagga for treatment. So what we thought is we're used to that routine now anyway. Wagga for us is a 100-kilometre drive each way, so 200-kilometre round trip. So we thought, let's keep that. And instead of chemo, let's replace chemo with music therapy because we knew we had some awareness from the hospital and the music therapy that they would provide us with there, that Patty had a real interest in, but mainly percussion, but just music in general made him happy. He loved to dance to beats. He had a groove about him. So we replaced that with a beautiful organisation in Wagga called Little Melodies. And we'd go there every Thursday, meet other mums that had kids similar ages and just enjoy a bit of connecting time together. It's so tricky. I feel with Patty, I've spent a lot of time with him because he's needed additional support, but it's important to also remember that I'm just his mum. I'm not his, physiotherapist and his carer. I'm his mother. And so it's nice for us to have that opportunity to do something together where we were just a mother and son having fun and growing and learning together. So those Thursdays for us became really quite a sacred thing to do. The other thing we needed, though, to address was the big elephant in the room. So while Patty was on treatment, he essentially lost 12 months of his development. So from the day of diagnosis right through on chemo, there was little we could do to support him because his energy levels were so low. So we didn't want to overwhelm him with all of the, early interventions that he needed. But now treatment was finished, it was time to try and make up for that lost 12 months. And so from there, we stepped into things like physiotherapy, OT, speech therapy, orientation mobility, which is basically provided usually through Vision Australia or guide dogs and teaches children how to navigate the world without sight. So using your cane, for example, is a most obvious tool of how O&M plays out. And I knew as a teacher and, as a parent, you're always told about the first 5 years is so important. Anything you can get done those first 5 years really sets your kids up for success. So I was conscious that, even though I was tired and I didn't really want to go to physio every week with Patty, it was essential that we did what we could now because those 5 years were really going to count. So we would do physio. I think we'd alternate physio 1 week and then OT the next week. So we're seeing each of them fortnightly, basically. Patty's speech was significantly delayed, so there wasn't much we could really do. Our speech therapist actually taught us a keyword sign. And I remember thinking, he's blind, not deaf, right? Like, I actually had to say that to her because I'm like, oh, this one, she doesn't know what she's doing. She's teaching us how do you teach a blind kid to do basically keyword sign language. But it was amazing. Keyword sign actually gave Paddy the freedom to express what he needed. So basic needs like I'm thirsty or I'm hungry or I'd like more. And it took away a lot of the frustrations. And so that was modeled tactile. So positioning his hands in the right spot so he could feel what it was like to make that sign. So obviously we weren't doing sign to him, but he would use sign language to express to us what he needed, which was a really cool little tool of communication, which I sometimes forget about. And it popped into my head the other day when I saw someone else doing keyword sign. I thought, oh yeah, we used to do that too with Paddy. So many amazing ways and specialists that we engaged in to get us through that period of time. The other thing, which was for us the huge elephant in the room, was Paddy's loss of vision. And I remember once, you find out your child's blind, so then everyone puts the referral into Vision Australia, and they started calling to see how they could support us. And I remember saying, I'm really sorry, but I just can't even deal with that at the moment. And it was something for the first at least probably 6 or 8 months. I just wasn't in denial, but I just wasn't ready to learn more about that yet because I was still in survival very much with chemotherapy and losing dad and my own mental breakdowns. So once I kind of got through all that, it was like, okay, I think I'm in a space now where I'm ready to learn what this vision impairment means and what we need to do to support Paddy. And the first thing I did was they had a parents call of parents who had children of similar ages that were recently diagnosed. And on this call, they had a parent guest speaker whose name was Gina. And she could have been anywhere in Australia. We just, here's a mum who's going to tell us her story. And Gina had 3 children who were all vision impaired. So her children had a genetic condition, which is how all 3 managed to be blind. And she basically told us about raising her children and how they were now in their late teens, early 20s, and they all had, traveled independently. They'd all gone to university. They all, some of them were living on their own at that point as well. And for me, I just thought, wow, if this lady can do that for 3 children, then I can do this for 1. I just needed that carrot, someone to tell me that Paddy was going to be okay and he would tick off the same kind of milestones that his peers would tick off. And for me, that was really all I needed was hope at that point, because it's really tricky when you go down that rabbit hole of, oh, okay, our child's blind, and you start thinking about certain things. Like, I remember one thing we stewed on a little bit was like Christmas or birthdays. Like, how will he ever know the joy of opening a present because he can't see what's in it? We got really hung up on that. And then, you start creating this list of all these, sunsets, sunrises. How will he see this? How he'll never see that? He'll never. And if you start to compile a list of all the things he'll never see, well, you could write an incredibly extensive list. But in doing that, you're actually neglecting the fact that he's going to experience the world in such a richer way. He's going to be able to feel the change in temperature when it's sunset and sunrise. You can feel the sun on his skin. You can smell the dew on the grass. There's actually so many incredible ways in which we experience the world. But when we have vision, all of our other senses become, in a way, kind of retrograde and put to the back, and we just focus on what we see. And so it was an important mindset flip for me to go, all right, I can keep playing this game and finding all the problems. Or instead I can flip this to focus on all the things he will still continue to do, but I need to understand that he's going to do them differently and it's going to look different. So Christmas instead will be, the present won't actually be in a box, it will be already unwrapped. So as soon as he opens it, his hands are straight in there and he's going to feel what that present is to work out what it is. His Christmas and birthday presents might have really great accessories on the wrapping paper. We have one beautiful friend, and every Christmas when she sends a present, she puts bells on Paddy's presents so he can tell and feel that they're his presents because they've got a bell on them. So it's about shifting that really limiting mindset and instead opening up to the myriad of other ways that people with vision impairment and more broadly disability can and will experience the world and get great joy and pleasure from that as well. So that was a huge revelation for me. Along the way, another person that came in to really help with vision was another mother called Belinda. And I met her through a friend of a friend. Not long after Paddy had been diagnosed, a friend reached out that I'd studied with years ago and said, oh, I know this lady who, has a daughter who's vision impaired and mum's a teacher as well. And I think you'd really get along with her. And so she's more than happy to talk to you. Here's her number. And I remember thinking, oh, that's really nice, but I'm not ready yet. which was fine. And then, as I say, months down the track, when I was in a place to want to learn more, I called Belinda and we had one of the most amazing chats, because there's something so special about, you can talk to, all of the allied health professionals in the world, but there's nothing like talking mum to mum. What's it like to raise a child with a vision impairment or a disability? And I just got to ask her all the stupid little questions that I needed to ask, that I felt, you can't really ask your OT about Christmas presents. That felt a bit weird, but you could ask another mum who's, wrapped Christmas presents for her child for years. So that became a really valuable friendship for us at that time. And also in the future as well, when Patty was starting school, Belinda was someone I reached out to for advice again. One thing Belinda did give me was a poem called Welcome to Holland. And I remember when she said, it was like kind of the last thing we said before we hung up on the phone. She's like, oh, have you heard the poem Welcome to Holland? It's really great. It's about disability. You need to read it. And I remember thinking, yeah, okay. And then hanging up and thinking, what a weird poem. Like, what's Holland got to do with anything? I'm just raising a kid who's blind. Anyway, curious, I Googled it. And this poem is everything. It sums up, for me, everything it feels like to raise a child with a disability and to come to terms with the news that you have a child with disability, because that in itself is a huge learning process, and it's a continual process because you hit different stages and there's different things you need to shift the mindset on, or become aware of or learn. So I'm going to be brave today and share this poem with you, because I think everybody needs to hear it, whether you have a child with a disability or not, because it gives you so much empathy and a place where you can now approach disability and the parents supporting them with a little bit more empathy and compassion. I'm going to tell you in advance that I'm probably going to struggle to read it because it gets me every time. I did a practice before the podcast and I was like, I've brought the tissues into the room because I'm like, oh, this poem just hits me so hard in the heart every time. But bear with me and I will get through it for us all. The poem is called Welcome to Holland by Emily Pearl Kingsley. I'm often asked to describe the experience of raising a child with a disability, to try to help people who have not shared that unique experience to understand it, to imagine how it would feel. It's like this. When you're going to have a baby, it's like planning a fabulous vacation trip to Italy. You buy a bunch of guidebooks and make your wonderful plans. The Colosseum, the Michelangelo's David, the gondolas in Venice. You may learn some handy phrases in Italian. It's all very exciting. After months of eager anticipation, the day finally arrives. You pack your bags and off you go. Several hours later, the plane lands. The stewardess comes in and says, "Welcome to Holland." Holland, you say? What do you mean Holland? I signed up for Italy. I'm supposed to be in Italy. All my life, I've dreamed of going to Italy. But there's been a change in the flight plan. They've landed in Holland, and there you must stay. The important thing is that they haven't taken you to a horrible, disgusting, filthy place full of pestilence, famine and disease. It's just a different place. So you must go out and buy new guidebooks. You must learn a whole new language, and you'll meet a whole new group of people you would never have met. It's just a different place. It's slower paced than Italy, less flashy than Italy. But after you've been there for a while and you catch your breath, you look around and you begin to notice that Holland has windmills, and Holland has tulips. Holland even has Rembrandts. But everyone you know is busy coming and going from Italy, and they're all bragging about what a wonderful time they had there. And for the rest of your life, you will say, yes, that's where I was supposed to go. That's what I had planned. And the pain of that will never, ever, ever, ever go away, because the loss of that dream is a very, very significant loss. But if you spend your life mourning the fact that you didn't get to Italy, you may never be free to enjoy the very special, very lovely things about Holland. What a poem, hey? It's just, as someone who travelled a lot, the travel metaphor really worked for me. And I think it really embodies that mindset shift of, life didn't go as you had planned, but the life you've got can still be fabulous if you have gratitude and you look around for all the good things you've got going for you as well. And it just, if you know someone who's raising a child with a disability, see if they know that poem, and if they don't, share it with them, because I think for me it made me feel very seen, and it captured the feelings that I had as a parent raising Paddy, where, as especially, young babies and children, we are just programmed to compare, aren't we? We have these developmental milestones. They even give us books now on where your child should be up to and what your child should be doing. And when you're raising a child with a disability, that is incredibly hard because that rule book no longer applies to you. But sadly, we try because we want to conform and fit in to make our children fit. And when they don't fit, we feel lesser, and we feel like maybe our children are lesser because they haven't hit that milestone. And so my one massive piece of advice is to share the quote that says, "Comparison is the thief of joy," and you need to let go of all comparison. And I admit it took me probably a year or so before I got to that point where I realized, hold on, if I'm going to keep comparing Paddy to everybody else, I'm just going to keep seeing failures. And in doing that, I'm actually missing the fact that he's making gradual and consistent progress in his own therapies. And so for me, then it shifted to Paddy versus Paddy. Where is Paddy now, so many months on from where he started? It took years to get Paddy to crawl. I think he was around 3 before he could crawl. He was nearly 5 before he could walk. So that's a long time. If I was comparing, most children walk around 1 year of age. It took Paddy 5 years to master that skill for a variety of reasons. But he made it. And at the end of the day, I often think of it too in relation to breastfeeding and bottle feeding. Like when everyone grows up as an adult, no one goes, "Oh, I'm sorry, but were you breastfed or bottle fed?" No one gives a shit. As long as you reach, some kind of level of skill and competency in life, no one really cares at what stage you did that as a child. So my biggest tip is please let go of that. If your child is struggling, definitely get help. I'm not saying just ignore the fact they're falling behind. But if you are getting support for them, just focus on their own progress and how they're tracking with that, and stop looking sideways at everybody around you, because you're in a very different lane now and you're taking the scenic route in life. It's not about getting from A to B. And what I've realized is that my life is so much richer on the scenic route with Paddy because I stop and I take in the little things along the way rather than rushing to just get to the next point in life and the next milestone and the next thing. So in a way, it's been quite a blessing to teach me to slow down and change my perspective on life as a whole, not just with raising Paddy. It's so important. The other thing that came out for me that helped with Paddy's vision in particular was one of those serendipitous moments where I just had the telly on in the background and the kids were actually down for a nap at the time. And this TV show came on, and I remember, I think it was like folding the washing or something, so you're kind of not really watching, but watching. And I looked up and I was like, oh my gosh, that street looks so familiar. And I was like, that's in Bury, which is where I grew up as a kid. I'm like, what? And then I looked again, and the guy being filmed was blind. And I was like, what? And it turns out this guy's name is Daniel Kitch, and he is an incredible human being with complete blindness as well. He became blind actually around nearly the same time as Paddy. So obviously by this stage I'm watching, right? I'm not just folding washing. I was like, washing is done. Tell me more. And this guy created or coined the term echolocation. And so if you've heard of, dolphins that send out sonar with different noises that they make, and the echo kind of bounces back off surfaces in front of them. And so what Daniel Kitch had developed was this kind of clicking noise, which you can do with your tongue. And depending on your skill level, obviously it's a skill, so you've got to develop it. But being vision impaired, what he was able to do is make these clicks, and through these clicks alone, discern the environment around him. And so the scenario was Daniel walking down a street in Bury, my hometown, clicking from left to right and then describing the scenery around him. So for example, he would turn his head to the right, click and say, there's a tree, and then behind the tree there's a car that's parked parallel to the curb, and then he'd turn his head to the left. He'd go, on my left I've got a house, it's got some kind of small wooden fence, it's about waist height, and then the house is some way beyond that fence behind it. And he just kept walking along this street, calling out where trees were, whether, without touching, whether a fence was brick or not, whether, there was just all of the scenery around him. And then to my complete surprise, he took a pen and paper and then did a rough sketch of what the street looks like. And this blew my mind on so many levels, because I assumed when you don't have vision, concepts like mapping and those things seem so far-fetched. But then I watch, we're raising Paddy now and he learns tactile maps. So his O&M instructor has been teaching him how to cross the road. So we've been looking at, you've got to actually break down and learn, okay, so how are roads set up? So there's parallel, there's perpendicular, then there's blocks. How big's a block usually? How many houses might be on a block? And so all of those things are actually taught to children, which, duh, but at the time I didn't think of that. But what they showed also with Daniel's skills is he's teaching lots of other vision impaired people how to echolocate and click and things. And they had another gentleman who was much taller than him, who also echolocates. And what they did is they put both guys in MRIs separately, and then they played them each other's clicking sounds. And just from listening to that, they could identify, yep, that's a click heading into a metal pole. No, that's bouncing off wood. Yeah, that's probably a car. Yep, that's a tree. Because just like our eyes recognize, shapes and colors and identify uniquely that the tree is, has a brown trunk and green leaves, so too can sounds be unique to different surfaces and structures. And the interesting thing is when they played these clicks to each man, so that David's clicks to the other man, for example, and the other man's clicks to David, is that they could both still discern what the objects were. And the comment from David was, oh, this person must be taller than me because the sound feels higher up than where I am. Like, how crazy is that? And so when you have a blind child at home thinking, what's this going to be like? And you see a man with such impeccable, incredible skills who travels the world independently and navigates airports, and, he was riding a bloody mountain bike down a mountain trail clicking. Like, I don't want Paddy to do that. That sounds deadly to me. But it just opened up again this kind of slightly narrowed vision I had of vision impairment and what life may be for Paddy. And it blew the lid off it and went, well, looks like pretty much anything's possible here, given the right skills, surrounding yourself with the right people. And I love that I just, I could have had the telly on any channel. I just happened to have it on that one. That show just happened to come on. It just happened to be filmed in my bloody hometown of all the towns in Australia that guy could have been in to pique my interest. And I think, wow, isn't the world a wonderful place when those kind of things happen? And that, like I said, the shift on my mindset just from seeing that video, and I've shared it with quite a few people to just go, think bigger, please. Look at what this guy can do with the right tools. And I've even heard actually one of our other, she was our Braille teacher. We used to work with her through guide dogs, and we were talking about this echolocation, and she was telling me she had a client that she knew that you could take her to like a football field. So a big open space, which is the hardest area in which to navigate because there's not much to bounce off the sound. And say, whereabouts are the goalposts? And this young girl could click and not only just like point in the direction of the goalpost, but also tell you it was about 70 meters away. And then they'd measure it and it was. And I'm like, what? So for us, it's really important when we're teaching Paddy to use accurate distance and how far away things are, which is bloody hard because I'm not really good actually at guessing that. My head always goes, what's a 100-meter sprint look like? Oh, it's probably half of that. So it might be 50 meters or, but being able to talk to people with vision impairment in accurate distance is so important because it helps them interpret and map the world. And the other cool thing, from that MRI is it showed that the visual part of the brain, so even though your eyes aren't working to send the message to the brain, the visual part of your brain still fires up when you're giving descriptions and you're describing what a space looks like. And to me, that was a really interesting, amazing function of the brain as well. Oh, all right, so I got swept up in that because I just love it. But let's see what else I had to say. Oh, yeah, okay, mindset. So another example of mindset for me was when Paddy needed to use a walker. Two times actually. One, when they gave us our first cane, and I thought, oh, I don't know how I feel about this. And the second was when physiotherapists said, look, he's not going to probably walk on his own. He's going to need a walker to get him upright and into position and strengthening the muscles he needs to walk. So for me, they triggered a really extreme reaction where I just went, no. Because in my head, Paddy was blind, he wasn't disabled. And I don't know why, but I still actually really hate the word disability because to me it implies everything you can't do rather than everything you can. And I never wanted to label Paddy as disability. Being so little, I feel like sometimes I used to think he didn't look disabled and I didn't want to make him look disabled for me. And that comes very much from a poor mindset that I had around disability, which I've clearly worked through now. And those two moments really challenged me because I had to change and confront, why did I feel like that and how do I get through it? So in particular, the walker was a big one for me. And Fred came with me for that appointment because we'd go and trial some equipment to see how it went. And I just started crying the whole way to Wagga because I was like, why are we even doing this? I don't want him in a walker. Like, I didn't want to have to deal with him looking different, being strapped into some kind of device. And everything about it at the time just felt horrible. And I was always proud of myself on bringing my A game when we had appointments, because I was like, if you bring a positive, can-do energy to an appointment, then your therapist will meet you at that same place and you'll have a great session. And so to show up and just feel like the biggest downer in the world with a really negative mindset felt horrible. But I decided to call it out. So as soon as I got there, I said to the ladies, look, I'm going to be honest with you. I'm really struggling with this appointment. I'm really against a walker. I just don't feel like he needs it and I don't want that. But we're here, so let's trial the equipment. But I'm sorry, but that's what I'm bringing to this appointment today. And they're like, that's fine, no worries. Like, it's challenging, we'll try a couple of things and see how he goes. There's no pressure, And so they put Paddy into a walker. And it was really like one of the first times we got to see him stand independently on his own. And then he took a few steps and you just think, oh my God, he's walking, he's moving. And then they put a soccer ball in front and he kicked the soccer ball, like an audible soccer ball, and his face lit up. And it was just, I thought, then I was crying again because I was, finally seeing my child a step closer to another milestone. And that flipped everything because I thought, you're about to write off a great opportunity here because you just had such a limiting belief and mindset around disability and the equipment associated with helping people with disability mainly. And instead, what I needed to see it is a tool for independence. This, having the walker, when we then took that into daycare setting, Paddy, who for years had been just on the floor, sitting or crawling, when all of his peers, who were 3 or 4, obviously walking and running around, suddenly this walker gave Paddy level playing field. Now he's looking them eye to eye level. And that changes how kids see other kids as well. If you're on the floor, the perception is, well, you're a baby, right? So now Paddy's actually standing up. He's at the same level as his peers. And so he can interact with them. They can kick the ball together. He can play with them. And it's still to this day the most profound challenge I've had around equipment for disability and how we really as a society make a lot of judgments based on our own experiences or lack of knowledge. But you see someone in a wheelchair and that poor guy, look at him in that wheelchair. And you think, nah, look at him in that wheelchair. Like, that's a tool for independence. This guy's out and about. How fabulous. And so we've got to be really aware of how much of our own bias are we actually bringing to our understanding of other people's disability. So another example, which I've shared before, some of you may have heard, is, walking down the street with Paddy for the first time. So one, Paddy learning to walk, epic, took 5 years, 4 to 5 years. Teaching then Paddy to hold a cane, walk with a cane, another skill that's really challenging. And he could only walk for limited amounts of time. And so this day we managed to park down the street and I was like, we're going to walk to the cafe and get a coffee and it's going to be amazing. And it was like, I remember just thinking, wow, I'm finally holding my kid's hand and walking down the street, because that was something that I'd done with Audrey from such a young age. And I just hadn't had the chance to be able to do that with Paddy because he was always in a wheelchair or some other device if we had to walk a bigger distance. So this was a wow moment for me. And I remember an older lady coming up towards us with this like extreme look of pity on her face. And she was like, oh, the poor guy, he's had a really tough time, hasn't he? What's wrong with him? And I remember thinking, oh, nothing. Like, don't shit on my parade. I'm having a really great day. This is a milestone moment with my child here. And so I challenged her back and I said, oh, yeah, no, we're good. We're having a great day, aren't we, Paddy? Because the other element of that is your child is now listening to someone essentially put them down and say what's wrong with them. So one thing to this day that makes me want to stab people more than anything is when an adult or a kid says, what's wrong with him? Because what I really want to say is nothing. What's wrong with you? Because if you've got to come at someone and to ask what's wrong with them, then the person that has the problem is fucking you. And I'm sorry, it makes me really angry, and I'm going to just say that. Please don't ever say to someone what's wrong with them, because there is nothing wrong with anyone. Everyone's doing the best that they can with what they have. It's not your place to judge whether there's something right or wrong with anyone. And if you have that thought, please now have awareness and check it and think, oh, maybe that's actually a signal for me to do a little bit of work and work out why I think someone with a disability has something wrong with them or is having a tough day, when actually they're probably having a great day. They're out with their family, they're out with their friends, they're socializing. Good for them. That's what life's about. So changing mindset for yourself, but also, having to challenge the mindsets of people around you is incredibly draining as well. So something I did ever since then is just visualized after that this golden bubble around Paddy and I if we're out walking somewhere. And because I walk with him most of the time, or I'm guiding if we're in a new environment, he's holding me by the wrist to be guided as well. So we're together in a lot of things in life, Paddy and I. And I just picture this golden orb around us, bliss bubble that we are in, because we're out doing our best lives, doing our thing. And anyone with a negative energy that wants to throw it at us can just bounce off that, thanks, because that's not who we are today and that's not what we're doing. In saying that, there are times where that's, as I said, really draining. And even just on recent family holidays, being somewhere new, we take for granted actually in Temora that Paddy's just Paddy, and people don't look, they don't stare, they just say g'day, which is fabulous. And then it's not till you take your family on tour and suddenly you've got kids just eyeballing and staring because maybe they've never seen a cane. And then on that, can I say, don't ever shush your kids or pull them away, or, maybe let them ask the question or say to them, oh, isn't that cool? That kid's got a cane so that he can move around independently. Or if someone's in a wheelchair and your kids want to comment and point, go, yeah, how great is it? That's how they get around. We have our legs and that's great. This person has a wheelchair so that they can get out and do the same things we're doing. Just cut it down at that 2-year-old level where they start to question and ask. And instead, you have the opportunity to create the narrative for your children about how they're going to view people with disability. So please give them a really good one. Give them one that says, yeah, how amazing is that electric wheelchair? That guy can get around now and go for coffee and have groceries just like we're doing. It's pretty awesome, isn't it? And totally recreate the narrative of the poor person in the chair, because it's just not true. And we need to challenge that. And we need not just the parents or people with disability to challenge that. We need every ally, every parent, every person that we can get, please, to make that change, because it would make our lives so much easier if we could just move around in a new space and not have to worry about the judgment of others and the negative attitude and mindsets as well. All right, I think I've got everything off my chest that I needed to. I said this was going to be a fun episode. There's a lot of trigger points for me in this episode, but they're things that I've flipped and I feel really passionately about trying to help other people flip as well. So I hope that has resonated with you. All right, takeaways for this episode. Mindset and narrative are everything. Don't let them limit your potential, and don't use them, please, to limit other people as well. Be self-aware, challenge your beliefs, see the other side of people, come at life with empathy as well, because the world needs more expansion, greater empathy and compassion, and we need people to cheer each other on instead of put each other down. Second takeaway is don't ignore the messages and the serendipities that are given to you in life. These things happen for a reason and they're there to guide you. I love guardian angels. I think there's definitely an element of certain things are placed in our line of vision for a reason. And if they keep popping up, it's because there's something we need to learn from that. So please don't push that away. Be open to seeing them. And the final one is that comparison, of course, is the thief of all joy. Stay in your lane. It's got to be you versus you and your own growth. Whether you're an adult, whether you're a child, whether you're able-bodied or disabled, it doesn't matter. All you need to focus on is being a better version of yourself each time, growing yourself as a person, whether it's with your health, whether it's your wealth, whether it's your mindset. It's you versus you. Because when you focus on everybody either side of you and you get out of your own lane, you're actually going to miss so much joy and so much gratitude for what you already have. So look inwards, not outwards. All right. Thank you so much for joining me. And I really look forward to seeing you in our next episode. Bye. I hope this episode has given you something to reflect on or some tools that you can implement in your own life. If you know someone who could benefit from this episode, please share it with your family or friends. It would mean so much to me. Remember to stay positive, be grateful, and take each step of the journey with kindness and love in your heart. Until next time, bye.